and welcome to Mom and Dad MagicBox, the show where we bring together all stakeholders in our children's education. I'm Isaac Carmignani. We begin with this week's headlines. Schools Chancellor Carmen Farina recently announced the launch of NYC Schools Accounts, a new tool for parents to view critical information about their children, including grades, attendance records, and the contact information on file at the school. State test scores will be added after they are released. The account, which parents can sign up for starting June 8th, gives families the ability to view student information on mobile devices. Parents or guardians will be able to sign up for an NYC Schools account using their personal email addresses, create their own passwords, and access information about all their children through one account. Student information will be viewable on any type of device and will be available in 10 languages. The NYC Schools account will enable parents to see information they formerly found in ARIS, a system that cost the Department of Education $95 million between 2007 and 2014, but was heavily underused. In the 2012-13 school year, only 3% of parents logged in. The NYC Schools account was designed in-house for less than $2 million and will cost under $4 million for further development and maintenance over the next 4 years. Parents must register for an account at their child's school, where their identities can be verified. To further ensure the privacy of information in NYC Schools accounts, all student data is encrypted. The system is entirely built and maintained by the Department of Education, and no outside entity or vendor has access. The Department of Education will provide guidance to school leaders and parents in the summer. And now to follow up on something we reported on a few editions of this show ago. A surprise no vote by the city's education policy-making panel this past Wednesday night highlights the fine line that Mayor Bill de Blasio must walk while lobbying lawmakers to keep control of the school system. Roberto Soto Carrion, a consistent supporter of the mayor's proposals, cast a decisive vote against the city's plan for where to open Success Academy Midwood, a charter school in 2016 that was planned to be opened at Andrea's Huddy Middle School. It marked only the second time in the 13-year history of mayoral control that the panel, whose 13 members include 8 chosen by the mayor, rejected a city proposal. And that's it for this week's headlines. Now we return to our coverage of the Google OnAir Education Conference, and we pick up where we left off last week, where the question is being raised, what questions should we be asking of our children regarding their future? Here is the Google moderator.
All right, Jamie, I want to toss one to you. I know that you cringe when people ask your children, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because you want the question to be centered around problem solving. What problem do you want to solve?
Right. I cringe anytime someone asks my 13-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because we've identified a couple of times already this morning that there's a good chance that the job doesn't exist yet, that there's a good chance that we don't know what the problems are that we're going to solve. So we have to teach our kids how to go through a problem-solving process. So instead of asking kids what you want to be when you grow up, we should be asking our kids what problem you want to solve. And then the follow-up question is, what do you think the knowledge, skills, and abilities are to solve that problem? And where can you get those knowledge, skills, and abilities? And it opens up the world to students to think about where do they get the knowledge, skills, and abilities? Not just what they can do in school, but what can they do after school? What can they do online? Who can they follow on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Google+? What videos should they be watching? What websites they should be subscribed to? But when you do that, when you go from where do you want to be when you grow up to, what problem you want to solve, you're in that magic triangle that Daniel Pink often talks about for motivation, right? Which is you're building autonomy, purpose, and mastery.
At what age would you say we need to be introducing that into the curriculum?
I think we can, right from the beginning, start talking to students and have them figure out what problem solving what looks like, because they're trying to not just solve a problem, but identify what the problem is, and that's as critical as a skill that we need for students than anything.
Cool. All right, now I want to move over to Yoni. I think a lot of people out there, educators, are listening right now, and they're just feeling a little daunted about what is the first step that they can take. So I thought maybe if you could run through some of the first steps that they could take, even starting on Monday, to emulate some of the good practice seen in Finland. What would you suggest, Yoni?
If I continue what I said about learning, I prepared this one. And what it takes that you ask one simple question from your students. How do you learn?
Right, Jamie, we've heard about Finland, and we know that it's one of the top school systems in the world and what they're doing to improve, but the reality is that doesn't happen everywhere. So you've been advocating that education is not broken, but it just needs to be reshaped. How does it need to be reshaped?
What I'm asking us to do is to do exactly what we did 100, 150 years ago and ask ourselves, what does the education model need to look like to support the economy of the future? The knowledge-based, network-based economy. What is it that we need to do in our schools? And so that's what I want us to make sure that we focus on, is what do we need to do to reshape education to support that economy? So that's my focus.
Okay, and a slight follow-up to that question, I want to pose this to Ken. You've been hard at work with thousands of educators. What seems to be working out there?
Here in California, one of the things that I can share with all of our viewers is that a number of years ago, our state superintendent put together a task force, which I had the privilege of serving on. And the whole theme of that task force was no child left offline. And it was a multi-pronged approach of looking at how can we in California leverage everything from our business relationships with the companies in Silicon Valley. How can we look at higher ed teacher prep programs? How can we look at school districts? How can we look at everything from infrastructure to literally what goes on in the classroom with students and provide a meaningful connection in every learning environment here in California?
All right, Zoe, I know you buried yourself in this research for so long. If you can talk about two innovative examples from around the world of people teaching students the life skills they need to succeed.
Sure. Well, what really struck me in the research and in the conversations I've been having with educators is that innovation in education often happens in the most unsuspected places. So I mentioned the New Zealand example of one of Auckland's most disadvantaged communities, but Bangladesh's own national education policy at its core gives teachers training into how to incorporate technology in lessons, and that's accompanied by an increase in group sessions, Q&As, and project-based learning. So students, for instance, are able to ask questions verbally, of course, to teachers, but also via live messaging software, which ensures that shyer students who might not necessarily speak up get the opportunity to do so. Another example which I found really interesting was one taking place in the US. It's a public charter school in Washington, D.C., which takes an interdisciplinary approach to skills by embracing real-life projects. So a group of first grade students were involved in running a snack bar for the school and raised money to build a children's library in a homeless shelter. And by conducting surveys on customer satisfaction, finding out which snacks were most popular, and also liaising with the shelter, they were, as a result, able to kind of develop their own skills, such as problem solving, communication, and even entrepreneurship, which I think is pretty amazing for at that age and that level of education.
Right, it is time to open up to our audience and pull in some of these questions. They're pouring in, so I want to be sure we can get to as many as possible. And the first one is for Yoni, and Melissa wants to know, what is an area you are still trying to improve?
One is that we'd like to bring back the joy of learning, having learning a fun, although it might be hard as well. Expanding the learning spaces or the concept of learning environment. I mean, We've had such a long history for sitting in the classrooms, and we know that and we've heard about that learning also happens out of school and a lot, and to use that one.
All right, the next question goes to Zoe, and this is from Emily. What did you find most surprising in your research?
Well, it was particularly interesting to me in the research that a lot of students are taking it into their own hands to make up for deficiencies within the education system. So in our survey of 18 to 25-year-olds, although a minority of students think that their education system has provided them with the right skills to enter the workplace, a majority were confident or very confident about their future career prospects, which reveals a bit of a dichotomy. I think part of that may be, particularly in developed countries, that some students are turning to private tuition to better their chances and thus making them less likely to attribute their skills to formal education. But mostly I think it's that students are becoming more independent and able to gather information for themselves. In our survey of 11 to 17-year-olds, so much younger students, one of the changes that students most wanted to see in education was lessons where they could talk about their own ideas, so they want more involvement. Now, to be absolutely clear, I don't think that this diminishes the teacher's role in the classroom. It perhaps just changes it from imparting knowledge to teaching students how to work with that knowledge, so in explaining, filtering, and sharing knowledge.
All right, and we have another question that's been coming in from several people, the same question. Corey was the first one in with it. So Corey wants to know, what is the most important skill? Can you have just one important skill? So I'm going to toss this first over to Ken.
The most important skill, I would say there really isn't one. In fact, we already saw, and I pulled up the graphic here, we saw in the research that 51% of the executives say that new employees, let me read it, 51% of executives say a skills gap is hampering their organization's performance. So I wouldn't say that there's any one specific skill. However, what I would say, again, going back to the mindset, is what is the mindset of those employees to acquire the skills to at least bridge or reduce that gap? One of the most important skills, if you want to use that term skill, is the ability to find where that gap can be filled. And that goes into a whole nother area of, digital literacy, being able to identify the most valuable resource to acquire the knowledge, which then translates to the skill set and things of that nature. But I would say that there really isn't any one important skill. Again, for me, it's more what is the mindset, since skills can always be acquired.
This one is for Jamie. Amanda wants to know, as we move into a more online, technical-driven society, what skills of the past do you see becoming less important? And as educators, are there certain skill sets we should be focusing on acquiring?
Yeah, and I can kind of wrap that into the previous question, which is what is the one skill? And I think there, if I would take on that challenge and had to pick one, I would say collaboration is the most important one. We talk about collaboration in education a lot, but we don't really mean it, right? Education, the way it's set up today, is set up as a single-player sport. It's my 13-year-old who gets homework, gets assignments, takes tests. Imagine as a teacher, you hand out a test to a group of kids, and at the end of that test, two kids come up to you holding the test together saying, we decided to combine our skill set and work on this test together. What would your reaction be as a teacher? And in reality, that's the world that we live in, right? Real collaboration is about understanding that your part is part of a greater sum, that you're not alone in this world, that you can find people that you can compare and contrast your skill set with and work on problems together, that you're not bringing a whole solution, you're bringing part of that solution. The real collaboration is about understanding that you're part of a greater sum. Real collaboration is the ability to ask really good questions, and the potential to change your mind based on what's presented to you and what's in front of you, and being able to build consensus and drive forward on solutions. And I'm not saying that that's how we should do everything, but that's a critical skill. I take comfort in understanding that I don't have all the solutions, but I have my skill set that I can combine with other people's skill sets to create what that solution is. So I think that's where if I would focus on one thing, I would think that, focusing on teaching collaboration is important. And we're starting to see this a lot with, project-based learning. Project-based learning is really about collaboration. And so that's what's exciting to me, and hopefully we'll see that in the future. In terms of a skill that we no longer need, I would say we don't have to memorize phone numbers anymore. I remember when we used to have to memorize 10 people's phone numbers when we were kids. We don't have to do that anymore. So memorization becomes a commodity. Information becomes a commodity because it's at our fingertips, right? So like I think Zoe said as well, the idea is that we no longer have to teach kids information because information is at our fingertips. Information becomes a commodity. There's no value to it. What is valuable is taking that information and converting it into intelligence. And that's what our educators are helping students do, is convert that information into real intelligence.
And I like the highlights on the collaboration. Ken, I'm going to give you this one because this is highlighting some of your experience in the classroom. This is from Matt. He wants to know, how can we inspire our veteran teachers to think differently about how they approach their subject?
I always encourage educators, the first thing to look at is think back, imagine back to the time when you first started working in education and you decided that you wanted to become a teacher. What was your thought process? What was your motivation for that? And then more importantly, why did you choose the subject matter that you chose when you first started? And that should be the basis or the roots for how you adapt and innovate throughout the remainder of your career, whether you identify yourself as a veteran or even if you're a first-year teacher. I think a lot of times that we can get caught up in the minutia of getting through standards, getting through testing, getting through all these things. And a lot of times in doing that, we lose some elements of that passion, that energy, and that fervor that we started off with.
Nicely said. All right, and for Yoni, we have a question from Tanya. She wants to know, what is the best way to give students the skills they need without skipping on the curriculum that needs to be covered?
One of the new skills that we try to introduce in our new curricula is coding. But I mean, in some countries, they think that now we should train all teachers to code. But like in Finland, I've seen that some of the teachers have made lots of new invention how to do that. They ask that, or they combine that with playing with kids. They ask them to please design a toy that moves. And then in the lower classes, it's very mechanical, but in the upper classes, you bring in the robotics and the computing skills quite closely. But in addition to that, she or he might ask that make an advertisement out of your new toy. And not to finish on that, but also keep a diary what you were doing. And now I'm referring again to that the learning skills are the most important, and you need to practice those, you need to rehearse and make them visible so you understand how you yourself learn it.
Brendan asks, with all the pressure to teach standards and teaching to the test, how do we bring these other skills in?
It doesn't make sense to add many more subjects to the curriculum, because then you end up being with one that goes in very little depth into each subject. So the consensus really seems to be on taking an interdisciplinary approach to skills. I think to your point about standards, I think we need to take a step back and move away from rote learning. Education systems often teach students how to succeed, but they don't teach them how to fail, or they don't portray failure as a positive thing. And I think in real life situations, particularly entrepreneurship and young people wanting to start their own business, failure can sometimes be a good thing. After failing twice or 3 times, you might then succeed on the 4th time. And finally, for teachers, I think what needs to change is to inculcate these new types of skills and these skills for the future. Teachers need more training. They've requested it in our surveys, particularly in areas such as digital literacy. But more importantly, I think they also need to be given more freedom by education systems to teach skills in their own classroom. So just a higher degree of freedom in how to incorporate 21st century skills.
Yoni has certainly
Yeah,
talked about it in Finland. Hang on one second, Jamie. I just want to make a point about the mistake aspect, because they actually reward mistakes in Finland. You make a mistake and you get a reward, but that teaches kids that they can continue to try and they're not afraid of failing. And Jamie, yes, if you can continue on that point.
Yeah, just a quick point on that. My daughter used to be a swimmer, and she swam during high school. She was really good at it, but when she was a little kid, she had a tough time with starting late. Right? She would jump in the pool like a second after everyone else would jump, and so because she was afraid to false start, she was afraid to fail, what I did is I told her, for every false start that she did, I'd give her $100. Right, and the idea was that it was a reward for the failure, and so I can see that point why it works. But to answer the question about assessments, we have to ask ourselves, why do we have assessments, and what's the outcome of assessments? And I think when we look at the outcome of assessments, what we want is accountability. We want to make sure our kids are doing well. We want to assess them, and it totally makes sense that we want to know how our kids are doing. But maybe, given this new world, given technology, given what we can do, there might be better ways of doing that, as opposed to doing some kind of standardized test that we do every year where we can't get real good feedback on, that isn't very useful. How do we convert that kind of assessment into a performance-based assessment where we're constantly getting feedback, just like we do in sports and in the real world, that we can constantly get feedback and do assessments for our kids, that assessments come from each other, where students can assess each other, where students can assess themselves, right? There are tons of ways of doing this where we can get that accountability, we can get that assessment on how kids are doing, but we want to work harder on building performance-based assessments rather than these stagnant assessments that we do once a year. And I think that's where we need to work towards. Now, given the world that we live in, from a how perspective, because we wanted to how, there are a number of school systems in the country, and I can point out High Tech High, Science Leadership Academy, Boston Tech, others, that don't teach to the test, but yet their kids pass those tests with unbelievable flying colors. And the reason why is because they take those things and incorporate it into the project-based curriculums that they use. They don't necessarily teach to the test, but they make sure they're covering those subjects in what they do.
And so we hope that you found that informative. Please tune in next week for a little bit more of our coverage of the Google OnAir conference. And now, to talk about our app of the week, we wanted to turn our attention, or your focus, to TED Talks. Now, TED Talks has an incredible amount of powerful lectures on all sorts of topics, and now you have access to that entire library on your phone, whether your iOS or Android device. For our museum of the week, we wanted to focus on Madame Tussauds. Madame Tussauds is located in New York City's Times Square, and this is an interesting way to introduce your child to many different things, whether it's political leaders or whether you just want to have a little fun standing next to your or their favorite Hollywood star, pop star, cultural icon, sports figure. They're all there, life-size, realistic-looking, and you can even do things like perhaps make a wax figure of your hand, and children can get very excited about those things. Last but not least, we wanted to bring you our performance for this week. Now, a few editions back, we had visited a Thai school in Jackson Heights, and we referred to the Songran festival, which is the Thai New Year. And so we thought we'd bring to you some of the performances, some of the dance performed by some of our young people at that festival on April 12th of this year. We hope you enjoy it.
เป็นกรรมการเลยเดี๋ยวเรา